This is how we quit our jobs and traveled 14 countries in 5 months. I think the idea all started when we were hanging out with Chris and Paulo in Las Vegas. They had a big whiteboard, and one day we walked in and saw written on the board like Italy, South Korea, what other countries were there? A bunch of other countries.
Spain, yeah.
And we were like, what's going on there? And they said, oh, we're going to travel the world next year. And so I basically looked at Kayla and later on said, we have to do the same. And it was actually quite a good time in our life. So I was basically quitting my job. We just had a house started being built, so it's gonna take like 6 to 8 months. And Kayla was able to travel and do school and work remotely. So the timing all just made sense because at some point we would have had to have the house payment when we were in Vegas. So before the trip, there were a bunch of things we did for planning. Really, our budget was $3,500 a month for both of us. And that's something that we could both do because we didn't have a mortgage or rent, we didn't have a car payment, we don't have kids, no pets. So it just made a lot of sense. And basically it was broken down into $1,800 a month for rent. So that's like $60 a day. Food, we did about $900 a month, which is what, $30 a day?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not a lot actually, now that I think about it. And we thought about it too, that the cost of food would have been the same amount that we'd spend when we were at home anyway. And then we budgeted about like $600 for just transportation, whether it's Uber or public transportation. Looking back now, we actually did not have budgeted flights, anything miscellaneous like clothes or souvenirs, but we got through it.
Yeah, so now on to booking. Obviously, we live in the US, so we had to kind of figure out what we were going to do for flights to get to where we were going. Some of the considerations were like dates and times of the flights, the duration, like how long the flight is, and the number and how long the layovers were, to make sure that we were on the best flight possible. And then, of course, we'll talk about this a little bit more, but we used a lot of airline points. So you had the Platinum Amex at the time, and I want to say there was a Chase card in there somewhere as well. And we ended up using a lot of points through Amex and Chase. One of which was the lodging. So we mainly did Airbnb, and to ensure that we had, all the logistics, let's say, were there, and that they had a fast response, and they gave us a discount. We had like a script that we would send them, and it would ask a bunch of questions, and that's how we kind of used that as a filter for where we were staying in our Airbnb. But we didn't just use Airbnb, we also stayed in a few hotels. We used Google Hotels, Booking.com, Hotels.com, and then there's two times specifically, where we actually slept in the airport. One in Peru, where we literally slept on the floor on our yoga mats, and then another time in Singapore, where we were luckily enough to be in a lounge, so we were able to sleep there. And then, of course, we had the generosity of friends and family throughout the trip, so thank you guys for letting us crash at your place.
Yeah, for the airport sleeping, it only made sense because it would be flights where we'd get in, I don't know, like 9 or 10 p.m. And then the next flight's like 6 or 7 in the morning.
Yeah,
so it didn't really
crazy.
make much sense to leave the airport, come back. So that's why we slept in the airport. We were traveling in 2022,
Yes.
which was basically the tail end of COVID. So a lot of countries were still kind of on lockdown. And so we had to navigate through things like having, of course, our vaccination in place, doing PCR and rapid antigen tests before entering a country. And some countries actually had a lot of paperwork beforehand. So one which was really stressful was the Thai pass.
Oh my God, yeah.
I remember we were in Nice, France before then, and we were on the beach when we got approval because we were so stressed that we booked flights and we don't know if the passes were going to get approved or not. So that was the whole thing. We'll talk about that in a future video. Another thing we had to do in terms of planning is travel insurance. So we didn't really know. We had to call our own insurance to see if it was covered. And usually insurance covers like emergency and urgent care. But we found Safety Wing. And Safety Wing's like $42 a month, which we thought was worth it for our kind of world travel here. During this trip, we actually found the power of lounges. This is the first time we kind of experienced that as part of having a Amex Platinum card and also a Priority Pass. And now that we travel with lounges, we can't travel without them. It's such a huge difference in the psyche. Yeah. It's like you're away from like the airport crowd, you get free food and alcohol if you want to, and it's just a more relaxing environment, especially as you're preparing for a long trip.
Definitely. And then something that I wasn't used to, but Gregory had been doing, is actually traveling in one like carry-on size backpack. like for everything basically. So he actually made a video on his own channel where it shows him putting all of his stuff in this one bag, but we both actually did one backpack each. And it was a bit of an adaptation at first. We had to get used to, you know, making sure all of our stuff could fit in this bag, making sure that we could carry it around. One of our friends that we met along the way, they would always say, look strong when you are standing in an airplane line, so that they don't check your bag for like, oh, you need to put this in check or something like that. And then basically when we started, I didn't know how to pack, so I just brought way too much stuff. Just stuff I never used, stuff I didn't need. And then by the end of it, I was like washing everything with face wash. Not because I really wanted to, but because we had gotten so light at that point that it just made more sense. So yeah, that moves us into during the trip. So of course, there's a little bit of planning in terms of what are we going to do when we get there. We used a lot of different resources though, from YouTube, Pinterest, blogs, you know, friends of ours. We talked to locals and talked to other tourists while we were there, and we got some good suggestions. I would say, you know, there's a lot of hidden gems in, you know, wherever you go. So just try to get off the beaten path every so often. And we were able to a few times, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Another thing that was interesting during the trip was I'm used to traveling alone, and so this is kind of my first time traveling with a partner. And because of that, we were kind of to ourselves at first. Yeah. But after a while, we thought we should start meeting people because that's part of the joys of traveling. So we try to do our best to talk to people, whether it's at the park or at the gyms, or, you know, try to go to rooftop bars because we like rooftop bars. And kind of two sets of people that kind of come to mind when we were in Argentina.
Yes.
I think after 2 or 3 days, we never really interacted with anyone. So we said, hey, the next people we see that speak English, we're going to go approach them. So we were at a grocery store, and I heard this couple speaking English.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, here we go. And that's where we met Anita and JC. So probably talk about them in a future video. So that was super cool. We basically met them and then hung out with them in Buenos Aires and again in Nice, where they live. And then another person actually approached us. We were working out at the park, and Augustine came up to me, started making conversation. And then anyway, we spent the next few days kind of hanging out with Augustine and Caro as locals in Buenos Aires. So that was pretty cool.
That was.
Another thing we had to figure out, because we had just one backpack, was our clothes. So we basically had like maybe a week worth of clothes. So every 3 to 4 days, we have to do either laundry. We'll try to, if we didn't have an Airbnb that had a washing machine, we'd go find a local laundromat. Or sometimes in cheaper countries, we'd find a laundry service. So like Peru or the Philippines, it was convenient because it was cheap. We just dropped off our clothes, and a few hours later, it came back nicely folded. And sometimes if we didn't have the right clothes for the season, like it was colder or rainy, we would just go to the local H&M because H&M is everywhere.
That is true. And just as a note too, we were buying stuff throughout this trip. And something that we kind of ran into was like some places only took cash. Argentina was a good example of that. And, you know, we had to find a way to either get more cash or find another place that took card. So, you know, it's always a good idea to have access to a way to get cash, whether it be a debit card or other. And then when we did pay with card and had the Amex Platinum, sometimes they wouldn't take it abroad. Visa was more likely to be accepted. So just keep that in mind when, you know, when you're traveling. It's something that we ran into quite a few times. So yeah, and then as we kind of got more involved into the local life, we actually, you know, tried to get to the gym pretty often.
Every day.
And we would hit up local gyms for the most part, try to get like either a day pass or a month pass, depending on how long we were there. And then if there wasn't a gym, most places have parks that have calisthenics gyms. So these are like outdoor gyms that have monkey bars and things like that. They're not really popular in the US, but we saw them quite a bit around the world. They were very helpful. And then of course we brought our yoga mats, so we were able to do yoga. And then if we needed a little something more intense, then we would go for a run.
Also during the trip, you know, typically when you're on vacation, you just kind of eat out all the time. But, you know, we were kind of living, working, and traveling at the same time. So we had to figure out food. And so we did things like find local grocery stores, and we would sometimes cook at home. If not, we'd use like meal delivery services, the US equivalent of, or the analogous to like Uber Eats in the US. But sometimes we try to carve out at least one meal a day, or on the weekends we definitely eat out. And we basically share one dish at a time. That way it's more cost effective, one, and we can eat more frequently and enjoy more types of food. In terms of our schedule, so we were not working or living in US time, so we had to figure that out, and I basically had a spreadsheet for the different time zones. But in general, it was mostly wake up late, explore during the day and do little habits, and then we do work and school later in the night.
Yes.
And then obviously weekends would be more free for us to do exploring of the country.
Yeah, so that's kind of the majority of what we would do during our stay in a certain country. Now, trying to get out of that country was a whole different ball game. So generally, when we decided to leave a country, we had a few different criteria that we wanted to meet before we left. One which was how close it is to us already. So like if we are in South America, we don't want to fly all the way to Southeast Asia. We want to try to stay in the region. So proximity was a really big thing, mainly because time zone differences can really take a toll on us. Obviously, the duration, taking an hour flight is a lot less stressful than taking a 14-hour flight. And then, of course, cost. The shorter flights tended to be cheaper, and we were on a budget, so we need to consider that. Another thing, too, is the season and weather of a certain place. We actually used the U.S. News Travel website. It was really helpful because they had these articles basically said when you should go to this place, and they would have like an average of the weather, whether it be the temperature or the rain, so that was very helpful. And something that we kind of looked for when we were booking flights was trying to stay in the major hubs. Meaning like these are large connecting airports. So for Southeast Asia, we really liked flying through Bangkok. For the USA, it was Los Angeles, New York, and Miami. And then for Europe, it was London and Paris. And we just found the flights to be a little bit cheaper and the layovers a little bit better when we flew through there. So yeah.
Yeah, and in terms of things that we've learned throughout the trip, we learned that doing everything at such a fast pace was not easy. Basically, we had 1 or 2 weeks in each country, but while we were in the country, we were figuring out what to do in the country and then booking the next trip, right? That wasn't easy because we had to figure out flights, Airbnbs, and everything else. It was a lot of coordination, a lot of time. I can't believe we even survived that.
Honestly, yeah.
And then also, we realized that kind of trip was kind of a lot of, not as comfortable because then you're always moving around and kind of getting adjusted and adapted to whatever situation you're in. So yeah. Anyway, after the trip, we kind of proud to report that we actually kept on budget.
Yeah, we did.
Over the 5 months, we spent about $17,000 for the both of us. And so that's an average of $3,400 a month, which I think is slightly below budget.
Yes.
So again, $3,400 a month for both of us total. That included lodging, flights, transportation, and food. And we did get to subsidize a portion of the trip with the American Express points. I think in total we were able to redeem $3,500 in points. Yeah. Mainly going to the flights, so that was super awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, would you do this again?
Honestly, no. It was really intense. For me, it was the first time I'd ever been outside of the U.S., so it was a very eye-opening experience. It was the first time I'd literally ever traveled this much and ever seen this much of the world. So I think in some ways it was amazing and overwhelming at the same time. I feel like I learned a lot about our relationship and about myself. And then this was kind of our first dive into shared finances, which I thought was interesting. And of course I got to see the world, so that was amazing. I especially wouldn't have done it this way because I was going to school and I was working remotely at the same time of doing this. So effectively, I was trying to study, I was trying to work, I was trying to take meetings while planning and moving every 2 weeks. So that was very, very stressful. And if you were my teacher at that time or a professor, I'm very sorry. But I think overall, I don't think I'd do it again, but I would never have taken it back. Yeah. I think that was such a transformative experience for me and for us. And I feel very, 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 very lucky and blessed to be able to do something like that. So yeah, I thought it was a good experience. But would you do it again?
No. But same with you. I think that was one of my proudest things where I basically flexed that, it was your first time out of the country. You did travel to 14 countries while doing school and work and taking care of me, of course. But I am glad that we did it together. Again, like you said, we learned a lot about each other. I think traveling with a partner is another level of developing the relationship. and we got to see a lot in a short period of time. I can't imagine doing it now, but we still travel, a few countries every year. But now that we've done this and we've kind of established a routine life, I do enjoy the not being too exhausted and not on the go. I actually don't know how we had that much energy.
I have no idea. Yeah.
And since then, we've done different trips, right? Instead of like a different country every 2 weeks, we've tried the Egypt, Dubai, Japan thing where it was like, well, that was a quicker trip actually. So that was like 5 days every
Yeah, can
country.
you explain like how long we went and how long the duration of the trip and how long the break was in between?
Yeah,
Because people don't know.
I think when we did Egypt, Dubai, and Japan, it was like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then we were in each country for what, like 5 or 6 days. But the issue with that was that they were all in different time zones and long flights apart. And that was another great learning experience because we were like, that was way too much in 2 weeks. So then we tried again last year. We did the Nordics, so it's just kind of like one long flight and then just country hop from there, and they're all in the same time zone. So that was like more tolerable. And now we're in Cape Town, so we're trying out this stay here for 1 month type of thing. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's how we quit our jobs and traveled 14 countries in 5 months. Stay tuned for a future video where we'll actually talk about those 14 countries and how we did. Let us know in the comments where you want to travel to next, and we upload weekly, so don't forget to like,
subscribe,
and hit that bell notification to follow us on our journey.
Yeah.
Peace.
How did this week go?
It is getting better. Still not the best. This is week 2 in Cape Town, and week 1 was really me trying to recover, or us trying to recover from jet lag.
Yeah.
I've never had jet lag like that before. I've actually haven't been sick in like 2 years.
Yeah.
And so last week was kind of recovering from like weakness and jet lag. And this week we're both recovering from
a stomach flu.
Yeah.
Woo!
So how was this week for you?
It was rough. I mean, the first half of the week was definitely I don't think I've ever been that sick to my stomach before, like in my entire life. I was literally like laying in bed shaking because I felt so bad. But I would say that it was kind of like a slow curve up.
Yeah.
Where basically the beginning totally sucked, but by the end of the week I was like, okay, this could be worse. And I think we're very lucky, even though we're sick, we're in this beautiful environment, we're around good people, and I think it's helping us heal.
Yeah.
So
something I'm very proud about is one of our goals is to work at least 7 hours a day. We did not achieve that in the first half of the week. Actually, it's been like 2 or 3 weeks now since we've left.
Yeah.
But I think Thursday and Friday we got up to 7.
Yes.
And in fact, we started prospecting, so that was good. We're getting back on the bandwagon.
Yes.
Or that's not the right phrase. We're getting back on the horse, I guess.
Back on the horse, yes.
Yeah. So that's cool. I think we talked about last week, we saw the penguins.
Yes.
And what was on? Oh, we did like a city tour on the bus. So today the plan is to go to Lion's Head, which is a prominent mountain here, I guess.
Yeah, like a hill.
And we're gonna hike that, try to do a sunset hike, and then go to Camps Bay, which is like a Miami Strip type of area by the beach. Then maybe tomorrow to do another beach thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Fun. All right.
Is that it?
Yeah. That's
All right.
it.